The humidity in Okinawa clung to my skin like a second layer, thick and salty from the sea. I was wiping down the bar at the Lucky Star, a tiny izakaya tucked away from the American bases, when my phone buzzed. It was a notification from my banking app, a routine check of a direct deposit. But the balance made my hand freeze, the damp cloth dropping onto the polished wood with a soft thud. My entire savings account, the one I'd earmarked for property taxes on the house in Colorado, was gutted. A single, colossal withdrawal had left it nearly empty. My heart, already tired from a double shift, began a frantic drum solo against my ribs. A mistake. It had to be a bank error. Scrolling back, the memo line for the transaction was cold, clinical, and utterly devastating. Wiring fee, final settlement, 117 Pine Creek Road. No, that was my address, my house. My fingers, gone clumsy and cold, fumbled to call my dad. The line rang into the vast, echoing silence of a 7,000-mile distance. I tried my older brother, Chris, straight to voicemail. A slow, icy dread began to seep into my veins, colder than the Pacific depths just beyond the harbor. I called my Aunt Maggie, my mother's sister, the only family member who ever felt like a true sanctuary. "Mags," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Something's wrong. The money's gone." "The bank says it's for the house." There was a long pause, filled only by the sound of her shaky inhalation. "Oh, honey, I was hoping you already knew. I was hoping they'd have the decency to tell you themselves." "Tell me what?" "They sold it, Kiera, last month. The for sale sign went up the week after you left. It closed 10 days ago." The world, the bustling little izakaya, the smell of yakitori and sake, the chatter of off-duty Marines, it all receded into a muffled, underwater silence. The house. The beautiful, rambling, slightly dilapidated Victorian on Pine Creek Road. The one my mother had painstakingly restored with her own hands. The one she left to me, and only me, in a will that was as clear as mountain spring water. "They can't," I finally managed to say, the words ash in my mouth. "It's mine." "The will, Mom's will." "I know, sweetheart, I know. But your dad, he said it was for the best. Said you were off chasing butterflies in Japan and the place was a burden." Chris backed him up. "They got a lawyer and petitioned the court. Said you were an absent owner, that the property was deteriorating. They claimed you'd given verbal consent." Verbal consent, from Okinawa. While I was working 70-hour weeks to save up for its new roof. The rage that erupted then was white-hot, scalding away the shock. It was a fury I didn't know I possessed. They hadn't just sold a house. They de-sold my last tether to my mother, to the person I used to be before grief scattered our family to the winds. "How much?" I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm. Aunt Maggie told me. It was a figure that made my eyes sting. A figure that explained the drained savings account, my share, they'd presumably call it, after deducting God knows what for their trouble. A pittance. A betrayal packaged as a payoff. "I'm coming home," I said. The next 48 hours were a blur of frantic, rage-fueled activity. I quit my job, packed my life back into 2 suitcases, and boarded a plane. The flight from Naha to Denver was a 15-hour purgatory, suspended between a life I'd built and a home that had been stolen. I didn't sleep. I stared at the in-flight map, watching the little icon crawl over the endless blue, and I planned. I landed in Colorado in a state of brittle, jet-lagged fury. The air, thin and sharp and scented with pine, was a shock to my system. Aunt Maggie picked me up at DIA, her face etched with worry and anger. She hugged me tight. "I'm so sorry, Kiera." I tried to talk sense into them, but your father, he's not been the same since your mom passed. And Chris, he's just followed him down that hole. "Where are they?" I asked, my gaze fixed on the Rocky Mountains looming on the horizon. "At the new condo, in Cherry Creek." "Paid for in cash, I hear." Of course, I had her drive me straight there. It was a sleek, modern building, all glass and steel, a stark monument to their fresh start funded by my inheritance. My dad answered the door. He looked older, softer in a way that spoke of leisure, but his eyes were the same, always slightly disappointed, always looking past me. "Kiera." "This is a surprise," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We were going to call you." "When?" I asked, stepping inside without an invitation. The condo was spacious, minimally furnished, and smelled of new paint and old betrayal. My brother Chris was lounging on a huge sectional, watching a giant TV. He had the decency to look momentarily ashamed. "Look, kiddo," Dad began, adopting his reasonable, lawyerly tone, the one he used to use when explaining why my childhood dreams were impractical. The house was falling apart. Taxes, maintenance, you weren't here. We made an executive decision. We did you a favor, cleaned it all up. Your share is in the bank. You wired yourself money from my asterisk savings account to pay a fee for selling asterisk my asterisk house, I stated, my voice flat. You petitioned a court with lies. You sold Mom's house. Chris stood up defensive. It was just a house, Kiera. You were gone, you left. Mom would have wanted it to be taken care of, and we did. We got a great price. Mom wanted asterisk me asterisk to have it, I hissed, the controls starting to crack. Her will was specific, you stole from me. My father's face hardened. Stole. We protected the family asset. You were off bartending in some foreign country. This is real life. You'll thank us later. The money's there. Take it, start over, be sensible. Sensible. The word was a match to the gasoline of my grief. I looked at them, these two men, my father and my brother, standing united in their gray new living room, and I saw strangers. I saw thieves. You haven't seen the last of me, I said, turning on my heel. This isn't over. My first stop was the county clerk's office. I requested every document related to the sale of 117 Pine Creek Road. The paperwork was a nightmare of betrayal. There was the listing agreement, signed by my father as acting executor, a title he'd granted himself. There was the court order, granted by a judge based on their claims of my abandonment and their fiduciary responsibility. It made me feel sick. But as I sifted through the thick file, a single yellow document stapled to the back of the original deed caught my eye. It was my mother's handwriting. A codicil to last will and testament, notarized and recorded the same year she died. I'd never seen it before. My hands trembled as I read it. It was brief and to the point. It stated that in the event of the sale of 117 Pine Creek Road, a specific sealed letter held by her attorney, Benjamin Shaw, was to be delivered to me, Kiera Marie Ellis, and only to me. It explicitly stated the letter was not to be opened by my father or brother, even if they were acting as executors. Hope, sharp and dangerous, pricked my heart. I drove straight to the offices of Shaw and Associates, a small, old-fashioned practice in downtown Boulder. Mr. Shaw, a man with kind eyes and a head of white hair, remembered me. He looked profoundly saddened when I told him what had happened. They never presented the codicil to the probate court, he said, his voice heavy. It was a separate filing with the county, but they must have overlooked it in the main probate file. It was your mother's final wish. She was a very thoughtful woman. He retrieved a small, fireproof lockbox from his safe. Using a key he kept on his own chain, he opened it and handed me a cream-colored envelope with my name written in my mother's elegant script. I almost couldn't take it. I took it to a quiet park, my hands shaking so badly I could barely tear the flap. My dearest Kiera, if you are reading this, then the men in our family have done exactly what I feared they might. They've seen the house as a thing, a ledger entry. They never understood it was a heart, a living, breathing story, my story. And now I hope yours. The house isn't just yours, my love. What is inside it is yours. Specifically, what is inside the walls. When I restored the house, I found more than old lathe and horsehair plaster. I found history, and I left some of my own. Your father always thought my renovation obsession was a foolish money pit. He never saw the value. But I know you do. In your old bedroom, the one with the ivy-patterned wallpaper, the wall behind your headboard is not solid. There is a panel that slides open if you press on the rosette in the corner of the floral design. What I left there is for you. It is my real legacy. Not the structure, but the soul inside it. I love you forever. Be brave, be curious. Claim your story. Mom, I sat on that park bench for a long time, the letter held to my chest, tears streaming silently down my face. They weren't just tears of grief now. They were tears of purpose. The new owners were a young couple from California. They were sympathetic but firm when I showed up on the doorstep, pleading for just 1 hour inside, alone. They'd bought the house fair and square, they said. Their hands were tied. Desperation clawed at me. I offered them money, a ludicrous sum for just 60 minutes. They refused, alarmed now, and asked me to leave. That night, I did the only thing I could think of. I became a criminal. Dressed in black, with Aunt Maggie as a nervous lookout in a car down the street, I used the spare key I'd hidden in the old garden gnome, a secret between Mom and me, and slipped into my own home. It smelled different, of new rugs and unfamiliar cleaning products. My feet carried me silently up the stairs, each creak a familiar friend. My old room was now a neutral-toned guest room, the ivy wallpaper buried under a coat of tasteful gray paint. My heart sank, but I went to the corner, to where the headboard of a new bed now stood. I ran my fingers over the smooth paint, searching for the texture of the rosette. It was still there, just a faint raised bump under the latex. I pressed. Nothing. I pushed harder, jiggling my fingers. With a soft, gritty click, a vertical seam appeared in the wall. A panel about 2 feet wide gave way. Reaching into the dusty darkness, my hand touched not insulation, but cool metal. I pulled out a long, flat, weathered steel box, like an old artist's portfolio case. It was heavy. I didn't open it there. I slid the panel shut, clutched the box to my chest, and stole back out into the night, a ghost reclaiming a piece of her past. At Aunt Maggie's kitchen table, under the bright fluorescent light, I opened the clasp. Inside weren't stocks or bonds or piles of cash. There were carefully preserved architectural drawings, bundles of old letters tied with ribbon, and a series of beautiful, detailed watercolor paintings of the house from every angle. And beneath it all, resting in a custom-made slot, was a single, small oil painting on a wooden panel. It was a landscape, a vibrant, swirling scene of mountains and trees, signed in the corner with a name that made my breath catch, A.E. Bierstadt. A smaller, modern envelope was tucked beside it. Another note from Mom. Kiera, the letters are from the original owner, a woman artist who corresponded with the great painters of the American West. The drawings are her plans for the house's unique studio wing, which your father later converted into a garage. The watercolors are hers. And the small painting is a study by Albert Bierstadt, given to her in thanks for her hospitality. It is, according to the appraiser I quietly consulted, exceedingly valuable. The history, the provenance, the art, it is all part of the house's true worth, a worth your father never saw. This was always meant to be your safety net, your freedom. Use it to fight or use it to fly. I am with you. I was holding not just a valuable piece of art, but a loaded weapon, and I knew exactly what to do. I went back to Mr. Shaw, this time with the box. His eyes widened behind his spectacles. He helped me contact a reputable art authenticator and a fierce litigator specializing in probate fraud and fiduciary misconduct. The lawsuit we filed was brutal. We didn't just sue for my share of the wrongful sale. We sued for the entire proceeds, plus punitive damages on grounds of fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and intentional emotional distress. We claimed they deliberately concealed a material asset, the art collection, that was part of the estate, thereby defrauding both me and the court. The Bierstadt study alone was appraised at over $2 million. The court date was a reckoning. My father and brother sat across the room, their faces pale and drawn. Their lawyer argued they had acted in good faith, that they knew nothing of the hidden art. But my mother's codicil, her letter, the provenance of the painting, and the testimony of the appraiser painted a damning picture of a rushed, greedy sale that willfully ignored the estate's full value. When I took the stand, I didn't look at them. I looked at the judge. I told her about my mother, about the house, about working in Okinawa to pay its taxes. I told her about finding the letter, about what the house truly was. I spoke of legacy, not ledger entries. The judgment came down a month later, It was a complete vindication. The sale was ruled fraudulent. The new owners, who were innocent parties, were allowed to keep the house, but the entire proceeds of the sale were ordered returned to the estate. My father and brother were personally liable for the court costs, my legal fees, and a significant punitive penalty. Furthermore, they were ordered to buy back the Bierstadt study from the estate, which was now just me, at its appraised value. As it was a clearly documented asset, they had effectively stolen and attempted to transfer. They had to sell the Cherry Creek condo. They had to liquidate retirement accounts. The financial blow was crippling. The familial rift was absolute. I didn't take joy in it. I felt a hollow, weary sadness, but I felt no guilt. They had chosen a path of betrayal, and the consequences were of their own making. With the money from the estate and the repurchase of the painting, I was secure, but I didn't buy the house back. That chapter, that physical space, was closed. The new couple loved it, and in a strange way, they'd saved the physical structure my mother loved. Instead, I did something she would have adored. I used a portion of the money to establish a small grant for historic preservation in our town, named after my mother. And I took the rest, and the beautiful, turbulent history contained in that steel box, and I went back to Okinawa. But this time, I didn't go to 10 Bar. I bought a stake in the Lucky Star. The owner and I, an older Okinawan woman named Hana, who had become a friend, turned it into a hub, a place where stories and art were shared. I framed my mother's watercolors and hung them on the walls. The Bierstadt study, a piece of Colorado soul, now lives in a secure vault, a timeless anchor. Sometimes, late at night when the last customer has gone and I'm wiping down the bar, I think about the house on Pine Creek Road. I don't think of it with loss anymore. I think of my mother's hands sliding that metal box into the wall, a secret hug across the years. I think of the strength she knew I'd need to find. They sold my house while I was in Okinawa, thinking it was just wood and glass and a piece of land. They had no idea they were selling the key to my own liberation, the final, brilliant lesson from a mother who taught me that the deepest foundations and the truest treasures are always built with love and hidden in plain sight. Thanks for joining me for this story of betrayal, family secrets, and one woman's journey to reclaim what was truly hers. If you found yourself gripped by Kiera's fight, if you felt the sting of her betrayal or the triumph of her discovery, then you understand that a home is more than a building. It's a story written in the walls. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales of secrets uncovered, justice served, and the unexpected twists life throws our way. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most valuable legacies aren't left in plain view, but hidden in the heart of a home. Stay curious.